So, Alex, we found out earlier this afternoon that Sajid Javid has been knocked out of the Tory leadership race. So, can you talk us through the three remaining contenders?
Well, three remaining contenders, Beth, clearly are Boris Johnson, who appears the runaway leader at the moment, and then followed by a sort of neck-and-neck tie almost between Jeremy Hunt and Michael Gove. Johnson, of course, is widely regarded to be the raging popular favourite to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, as of course the leader of the Conservative Party is ultimately chosen by the 160,000 members of the Conservative Party. They will dictate who the leader is. We'll find out when we find out who the final two candidates are, and I expect Boris clearly to be one of them. The final two candidates will then be chosen by members of the Tory Party in a postal ballot.
We'll find out shortly after 6 p.m. today who the two candidates left for the job are. So, who do you anticipate it being?
I think it'll be Boris Johnson, obviously you might say, and I think it will be Jeremy Hunt. I don't see Michael Gove picking up enough of the votes of MPs who supported Sajid Javid or indeed Rory Stewart in the previous knockout round. And I think for that reason it'll be a Boris Johnson-Jeremy Hunt showdown. Now, of course, this is very interesting, isn't it? Because in trying to gauge who ultimately will be PM, I mean, if we consider polls, YouGov, of course, did a poll of those who watched the debate on Tuesday night, and for the viewers, 21% of them thought Boris would be the best leader, while 35% thought Rory Stewart would be. But if we then distill those figures down to people who voted Conservative in 2017, Boris is the front runner there. I mean, he got 34% of those particular viewers, as opposed to Jeremy Hunt, who got 20%, and Michael Gove, who got 18%, and then, Michael Gove, who got 12%, I'm afraid, way down in the bottom there, and Rory Stewart, who got 18%. That would suggest to me certainly that I think it's very improbable that we will see anything else ultimately other than a Boris Johnson Prime Ministership.
So there's been a variety of debates and media opportunities this week for all contenders. Who do you think has come across best in these?
The format, of course, is quite adversarial, and perching them on those little stools is, maybe deliberately so, just to get them to be uncomfortable. But I think in terms of, certainly in terms of our own, I hope, informed opinion on the Brexit process, I think the person who did the best in telling it as it is to the public was Rory Stewart, clearly. I think the other candidates were being disingenuous at best in trying to say that they could somehow manufacture a different Brexit outcome. There isn't going to be one, as Stewart at least was candid in saying that. We can still expect come October to be confronted with either leaving the EU with no deal, or between now and then having accepted Theresa May's withdrawal agreement. That is still possible. It's certainly still possible. Or otherwise asking for an extension to the Article 50 period yet again, probably to conduct another referendum. I think it's not likely that we'll see a general election this side of Christmas, and they never say never.
So if the public, and not just Tory members, were able to vote in this contest, do you think the results would have been any different?
I just go back to what I say earlier. I think if all the public had been able to vote, then Rory Stewart would clearly emerge as the leading contender, because he would attract the support of those who would not vote Conservative. By definition, he was clearly seen as the best of a bad bunch from the perspective of, say, Lib Dem or Labour voters. Whereas if you just restrict that to people who vote Conservative, it's clear where Johnson's popularity is coming from. I mean, he's widely seen as the person within the party who, to quote the MP for Stratford-upon-Avon this morning, in an interview on BBC Coventry in Warwickshire, said he was the one to beat Jeremy Corbyn, basically, and put Nigel Farage back in his box, quote. So this is clearly a sentiment that a lot of Tory MPs have bought into. They think Boris is a winnable commodity. He, of course, took on and beat Ken Livingstone twice in 2 London mayoral elections, so they see him as a vote winner. I think, coming back to those polling figures released by YouGov, I'm not so sure of that. I think it's distinctly possible that if we do come to the improbable of a general election, that Farage's Brexit party will certainly eat into the Conservative vote. It's distinctly possible that Labour could come in through the middle, as it were, or at least be at the head of a so-called rainbow coalition. coalition.
Once we do have the final two, what happens next, and how soon would one of them become Prime Minister?
Well, once we have the final two names confirmed, it then goes to a postal ballot of Conservative Party members, or 160,000 of them. That process will take about 2 months to complete, so I believe that we get confirmation of the new Prime Minister on the 22nd of July. So we'll have to wait a little while for that one.
So which candidate out of the three remaining do you think stands the best chance of actually getting Brexit done?
Well, the simple answer is I don't think any of them do. I don't see anything in any of these candidates that would lead to a different outcome than could have been achieved under Theresa May. You know, to reiterate a key point here, the only withdrawal agreement on offer is the one that's currently on the table. If any of them are saying that they can renegotiate the Northern Ireland backstop, you know, the so-called provisions in that withdrawal agreement to prevent the return of a hard border in Northern Ireland, then they're just, like I said, being disingenuous at best, or at worst peddling falsehoods and putting the wrong expectations into the mind of the public. We need to be abundantly clear on that. The EU are not going to reopen that withdrawal agreement. They've said this time and time again. So for anyone to be saying in public that they think otherwise, well, one can only say that they're playing to the members' gallery here. And I think to that extent, then, if we wish to credit them with some seriousness, then don't interpret too much into what they say about that until we see a new leader confirmed.